This has now become the deadliest crackdown in the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran, with Iranian government officials saying 2,000 people have already been killed, but independent estimates put that number closer to 12,000 in just the past few days. We're talking men, women, and children systematically executed by the Iranian regime as they take to the streets protesting for a better life. Now, Iran International reported earlier today, quote, in the largest killing in Iran's contemporary history, carried out largely over 2 consecutive nights, Thursday and Friday, January 8th and 9th, at least 12,000 people were killed. Now, we're recording this on the 13th, so they're looking 4 days back, and we know, based off of footage coming out of Iran, that gunfire is continuing across the cities, and loved ones are still searching for family members that they've not heard from now in days. We have to imagine that if it was 12,000 a couple days ago, that number has significantly increased since then. And we already have Iranian government officials coming out saying, yeah, thousands have been killed. Reuters quoted an Iranian official on Tuesday that said around 2,000 people had been killed in the protests, the first time authorities have acknowledged the death toll. They say the Iranian official said that the people he called terrorists were behind the death of both protesters and security personnel. Now, we're going to show some graphic footage here again, just to try to get the information out there so the world can see this. What you have in this video was footage released earlier today showing families searching for their loved ones through a makeshift morgue in Tehran, to give you an idea of how widespread this killing has been. Now, a note on the statement there from the Iranian official: it's notable that anybody in the government would step up and say the number killed is in the thousands. We're talking going back to the 1979 revolution. Any one of the protests, as large as they have been, you're talking about dozens, at most hundreds, that have been killed already here. The government estimate has this blowing by that by orders of magnitude. And again, the government estimate is largely believed to be on the very, very low side. Now, the video that you're seeing here came from an Iranian opposition channel published from the Khazarsak Forensic Medical Institute. My apologies in the pronunciation. That's south of Tehran. And this message came alongside it. Quote, I traveled close to 1,000 kilometers so I could connect to the internet and send this documentation. The bodies you see are being thrown into containers. On that day alone, there were more than 2,000 bodies lying on the ground. When we arrived, an entire container was already filled with bodies. A refrigerated truck container with 18 wheels. Anyone who found the body of their relative, the forensic medicine team arrived, documented the bullets that hit them, issued a certificate with a code, and people stood in line and transferred the body to a vehicle to take it for registration. And that number stood at more than 2,000 to 3,000 on just that one day. Again, we're talking about one location in Tehran. And this was the news a couple days ago that started to come out, where doctors are saying we're having hundreds of people show up that are mortally wounded or already dead from these protests. And when you were getting that from 2, 3, 4, 5 hospitals across Tehran, you had to put this together to say the number killed here by the government cracking down and killing their own citizens, has to be in the thousands. Iran International continued by saying Iran is under a continued blackout aimed not only at security control, but at concealing the truth. Internet cuts, crippled communications, media shutdowns, and intimidation of journalists and witnesses point to one goal: preventing a vast and historic crime from being seen. They say over the past 2 days, Iran International's editorial board has reviewed information received from a source close to the Supreme National Security Council, 2 sources in the presidential office, accounts from several sources within the IRGC, testimonies from eyewitnesses and families of those killed, field reports, data linked to medical centers, and information provided by doctors and nurses in various cities. They say based off the information they received, those killed, which again, Iran International, based off of their estimate, says is more than 12,000, they say most of them were shot by forces of the IRGC and the Iranian besieged. They said, quote, this killing was fully organized. It was not the result of sporadic and unplanned clashes. Now, we are seeing a continued crackdown by the Iranian regime on any information coming out from these protests. In fact, we did get a note yesterday that Starlink, one of the only means of external communication, was experiencing jamming. Forbes reported earlier today, quote, we've not seen this before. Iran's digital blackout now has deployed military jammers reportedly supplied by Russia to shut down the access to Starlink. This is a game changer for the Plan B connectivity, frequently used by protesters and anti-regime activists when ordinary access to the internet is stopped. Now, I want to be clear, I did see some additional reporting that it's not clear exactly who that military technology came from and if it was designed specifically for the purpose of bringing down Starlink. I have seen Russia and China both pointed to as possible culprits for providing that technology to the regime. Either way, however it got into the country, it is continuing to limit the ability of the protesters to get this information out. To that note, Iran analyst Naveed Mahabi said, quote, "Limited messages received suggest that local protests are continuing in some neighborhoods, particularly between 8 and 10 p.m. This was his assessment earlier today. So as of, it follows information on January 12th. He said the messages also report that security forces in Tehran are going door to door, entering residential apartment buildings and confiscating satellite dishes. Iran's police chief appeared on state television and once again issued open threats, declaring, quote, "We will arrest the terrorist to the very last one." They say the regime's Ministry of Intelligence has also claimed that it arrested 15 individuals for sending videos abroad. So a complete and total crackdown on any information coming out. Any of the videos we see, we have to, it's very hard to verify, right? Because the Iranian regime is not offering any verification of anything we're seeing. In fact, we did get some of the only footage we're getting out of the regime is of the counter-protester protest, where they called it a million-man march. By most estimates that I've seen, it was in the tens, maybe 100,000 total showed up to this. Very hard to tell. Again, you're looking at state-sanctioned media and the narrative that they want to put out. From most accounts on the ground, the protests are continuing. In fact, we have started to get a handful of individual accounts coming out with every one of these wanting to remain anonymous out of fear that they would be hunted down and targeted by the regime. We have one account here relayed by Fautuk's News. They say a witness from Mashhad in northeast Iran shared this through Starlink. Quote, "Hello, please make our voices heard however you can. They say that the night before last in Mashhad, people saw tanks and they killed many. A friend of my brother was killed coming out of a gym on Thursday. His name was Mohammed Sharifi. I'm saying his name so he isn't forgotten, because it took 3 days for his family to be notified and go collect his body. I came to a relative's house and saw some middle-aged school kids saying 3 of their friends died. An acquaintance at the medical examiner's office told them that half of the people they bring in are under 18. Some of them aren't even teenagers. They are children. Whoever you call, one of the loved ones have been killed. They're moving bodies with pickup trucks. And they don't just hand over the bodies. The family of my brother's friend said they had to pay $5,000 to $6,000 US just to receive the body. Please share these without mentioning my name. Please be our voice." Now, I did take a little liberty there updating the dollar number. It was 700 million Turans, I think was the terminology. Huge number there, but it translated roughly to $5,000 to $6,000 US. We have another message here put out by Roxana Saberi, a journalist, saying she received a communication from a woman through Starlink in Tehran. Quote, "The truth is they're killing a lot of people here. One of my doctor friends said that the security forces held a gun to a woman's back and shot her point blank. He told me many children have been brought in for treatment at this hospital and that they, the security forces, intentionally shoot the kids first so their mothers and fathers stop bringing them to protests. They stabbed another guy and said, quote, 'The Shah should come and save you.' On Saturday night alone, around 50 people were brought to his hospital. All were badly injured, and many gave fake names so that a security file would not be opened up on them the next day." He said the hospitals and cities around Tehran are in much worse condition because they have fewer resources. And that's something to keep in mind is when these people are wounded or injured, I mean, everything from breaking an ankle, running away from regime forces, to being shot and being concerned for your life, going to the hospital is risky because there's only so many places that can treat these protesters. And you have to believe, as the protesters do, that the regime is going to be going to those medical facilities to find out who's there. And anybody with a gunshot wound likely was at a protest yesterday. Security file opened up. And as we've seen throughout the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran after these protests died down. Should the regime stay in power, anybody associated with standing up and pushing back against the Ayatollah should expect that they are likely to be hunted down, arrested, and many of them killed. So again, we cannot overstate the risk that these people are taking just by going out in the streets each night. Now, again, I mentioned there was a pro-regime protest. We got a little bit of that footage. It's hard to tell exactly how many people participated in that. The Iranian government was very quick to play that up and say, look, those that are stirring things up are just outsiders. They're foreigners. They're not citizens. In fact, the terminology recently used are terrorists, vandals, and domestic threats. And Iran continues to toe the line, the Iranian government officials at least, that all of these protesters are paid by the West, agitated by the West, and a lot of this equipment is provided by the United States or Israel. Now, a couple of things that we have not yet seen is any real concern shown by the Iranian government, and we've also not seen security forces lay down their arms or refuse orders to open fire against the civilians, to critical components as these protests continue. But the Shah in exile, Pahlavi, said that he has intelligence from inside of Iran indicating that some members of the country's leadership are gearing up to escape from the country. Here's what he had to say.
Well, that's not accurate. There has been cracks in the regime. Defections are beginning to occur. In fact, as I said, there have been an outreach of elements that I've already said that are prepared to do that. There are significant levels of authority, both in the armed forces side as well as the civilians. They know that this regime is on the verge of collapse. They need to be ensured that they can really have a place in the transition, a place beyond this regime. And that's exactly the kind of dialogue we have with those elements. Khamenei, the first thing that happened during the 12-day war, he was hitting on the ground in a bunker. They are gearing up to escape from the country. They are loading up planes to take off and maybe end up in exiling themselves. That's how close it is. This is when we get intel from inside the secret meetings within, we call it Beit Rahbari, which is the supreme leaders, sort of inner circle of decision making. There's a lot of demoralized people sitting right there, including Khamenei himself. As I said, they're just using brutality just to hope that they can yet again intimidate the country and in total obscurity go ahead and do whatever they want to do. But what's different this time is people have had it. They're committed to liberate themselves. And I think Iranians know that unlike the past that they were thrown under the bus, at least under two different administrations, the first time in 2009 and Barack Obama was in charge, and lately under the Biden administration, which basically gave the regime, in a mode of appeasement, an opportunity to gather second steam. It's not going to happen this time.
So, of course, those are pretty significant events worth keeping an eye on. Another major aspect here is international assistance, namely from the United States. Just about an hour ago, U.S. President Trump said, quote, "Iranian patriots, keep protesting. Take over your institutions. Save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I've canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MIGA," which is a term they've used, MIGA, make Iran great again. Now, a couple notes there. It does sound like communication has opened between the United States and Iran in recent days. Axios reported that Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi reached out to the White House envoy Steve Witkoff over the weekend and tried to open up a new corridor for communications. It seems like something Vice President Vance was on board with, saying, quote, "The smartest thing for them to have done," and it was true 2 months ago, is true today, "is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program." Now, a lot of differing stances here. We have President Trump now for more than a week saying that if Iran were to start killing protesters, the United States would go after the Iranian regime, and the response would be harsh. Now, when he first said that, there were already reports that the IRGC, the Basij, and other Iranian state security services had at that point killed Iranian protesters. So that red line had already been crossed and President Trump started talking. We've seen a bit of a change of tone in recent days as President Trump now saying that he's canceling all of these meetings. He's not planning to meet with anyone or talk with anyone from Iran until the killings stop. But again, all evidence that we're getting out of Iran is not only are they not stopping, the killings are increasing. And, you can see why many people inside of Iran are looking to the United States and President Trump specifically to try to help with this current situation. In fact, we have some reporting here from Trey Yingst at Fox News after talking with a handful of folks across Iran saying a lot of the Iranian people right now are looking at Trump. They see him as one of the few ways that they actually can topple the regime and see a brighter future.
Further south in the city of Isfahan, Fox News was able to make contact with a man who is using Starlink. He described battles between protesters and security forces who are using live ammunition. On the call, he said the government has really repressed them using weapons of war against the demonstrators. At the moment, the situation for the demonstrators in the street, the atmosphere is like a war zone, and some people are trying to escape from it. He goes on to say, I have to emphasize that among Iranian people, Trump is the most popular person right now. He has so much popularity because of the steps that he took toward preventing the growth of terrorism in the Middle East. They respect him.
So it really seems to me like the next few days here could be critical. We have long since passed the mark of this being just like any other protests that Iran has seen, even some of the most violent ones where the state really cracks down on the protesters. That threshold was crossed days ago. This is not like anything else the regime has experienced. But even if they are able to regain power and fully put this down, look at the numbers, even going to the state number of 2,000 people killed. That's 2,000 husbands, wives, fathers, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters. They're going to remember. It's not going to be that easy for the regime to come back from this. I mean, you don't kill 2,000 on the low side of your own citizens if everything is going swimmingly. They clearly are concerned about the stability of their regime. Now, if President Trump and the United States want to take action that will actually have a direct impact on the protesters' ability to change the government and pursue a better future for themselves and their families, my gut says that has to happen in the next day, 2, maybe 3 here. It's asking a lot of these people to continue to stay in the streets day in and day out looking for international assistance. And if it doesn't come, I just don't know how long they can keep up this pace. But either way, we have, again, days ago crossed into uncharted territory, historic territory, as the brave people of Iran continue to stand up to the ruling regime, the Ayatollah, and his security forces. But that's all we've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.